Hi everyone, good evening, and depending on where you are in the world, good afternoon or good morning. Welcome to Movement and Skill Acquisition Ireland and our second webinar series of 2020 titled Women Who Changed the Discussion. MSAI is comprised of Phil Carney from University of Limerick, Alan Dunton from Technological University Dublin, Ollie Logan from British Swimming, and myself, Ed Collin from Cork Institute of Technology. And we are passionate about skill acquisition, coaching science, and youth development. And we hope that by hosting these webinars, we are able to connect you with some of the leading figures in these respective areas. Our first webinar series ran from April to June of this year in response to COVID-19 forcing us to cancel our biannual conference. And you can check out those recorded sessions on our YouTube channel, MSA Ireland. Our first speaker in that series was former Ireland hockey captain and current England under-18s coach, Sarah Kelleher. And in the lead up to that event, Sarah spoke passionately about the need for greater efforts to raise the profile for female coaches in an interview with Kieran Shannon of the Irish Examiner. She said, "We need more stories, we need more voices." So in response to Sarah's call, we have decided to go with the theme, Women Who Changed the Discussion, for our second season, to promote the great work of female academics, practitioners, and researchers. We were really fortunate to be supported in this series by 20 by 20 campaign in Ireland, and their aim is to have 20% more media coverage of women in sport, 20% more female participation at player, coach, referee, and administrative level, and 20% more attendance at women's games and events. And I suppose just to wrap up the housekeeping, if you're on here, and you're welcome, just to make sure that you remain muted and you keep your video off if possible, just from a streaming perspective. And if you have any questions, that Alan and Phil will monitor the questions in the chat box, so that when we're finished with our discussion with our guest this evening, you'll be then asked and given the option to ask your question directly to our guest, and hopefully there'll be plenty of engagement. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Ollie, who's going to introduce this evening's guest. Thanks, guys.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Ed. Absolute pleasure to for those eagle-eyed of you to have a work colleague on the show today. Can I introduce Mel Marshall, who is Loughborough National Centre lead coach and also head coach of the London Roar, which we'll go into a little bit. She's also UK Sport High Performance Coach of the Year 2019. She's coach, of course, to Adam Peaty, and if you know anything about swimming, you'll know who Adam Peaty is. He's Olympic gold and relay silver medalist from Rio, multiple world champion, world record holder in the 50 and 100 breast long course. And he's also just broken a world record this weekend, and we might get onto that at some stage. Just to qualify how good Adam is, he holds 19 of the top 20 times ever swum in the 100-meter breaststroke long course. But Mel's also coached to a number of other athletes, particularly Luke Greenbank, who's the world's 200-meter backstroke bronze medalist. So Mel, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ollie. It's nice to see you. I've missed you. I've been away 6 weeks.
Yeah, well, you know, I think we only last chatted on Zoom yesterday, so I try not to think that this is a Loughborough National Centre meeting.
More exciting.
Yeah. So Mel, yeah, appreciate you're really busy at the minute. So just a little bit, tell us where you are and tell us why you're there, and a little bit about ISL. What is it?
So currently in Budapest, in the middle of a bubble, and the only time I'm allowed my mask off is in my room, so it's quite nice. Swimming split into two seasons, but two parts really, and one's short course swimming and one's long course swimming. So I guess like in athletics, you've got the indoor track and then you've got the outdoors. A bit of a similar sort of setup with swimming really. And 2 years ago, a crazy Ukrainian man, billionaire, decided that he wanted to really change the shape of swimming. So invested in a private league of swimming. It's called the International Swimming League. And it carried on this year. It was exciting last year because the final was in Vegas, which was excellent and a great choice of venue. But it's a new concept, and it's fast moving, fast paced, lots of points, lots of new rules, and it's just taking off really. So I've been out here for 6 weeks and been involved with it for 2 years really. And there's the London Roar team, Tokyo Frog Kings, Toronto Titans, Cali Condors, a whole series of big cities like New York Breakers. But it's not necessarily that it's if you're in the New York Breakers, you're from New York. It's an international based team. So on the London Raw, we've got Russians, we've got people from Japan, we've got Brazilians, British. So it's kind of, that's sort of the concept. So it's like an international team, even though you're swimming under like London Raw. So that's kind of it. So that's sort of what I've been doing the last 6 weeks. So we've got 5 more days left, but it's sort of like a tour, as in you would go on a World Cup and you go through qualifying rounds and semi-finals, and we've got the final this weekend. So
okay. And yeah, you've got the final this weekend. It was the semi-finals at the weekend just passed. The London team did pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, what happened to us before we got here, obviously because of the pandemic, 8 of our athletes are Australian. So we came into the championship 8 athletes down, and it wasn't even the 8 athletes, it was our 8 best athletes, which is a huge hit, really. So we've done well to make the finals this weekend, and I would say we've definitely we swam the house down this weekend, and I just think we had 2 world records in our team. Everybody was over 80% of people were on their best times. So from a individual performance point of view this weekend, last weekend to qualify, I thought we'd done a really, really good job.
Great. Well, I'm keen to just let everybody know a little bit about you, your kind of coaching, and kind of how you got to this point. So just tell us a little bit, I suppose, about your kind of family, where you grew up, and how you got into swimming initially.
Yeah, so I was many years ago, I was a swimmer myself. I retired after 2008 Olympics, and I got into swimming really because my parents wanted me to get into swimming, and without going into too much detail, there was sort of a personal family reason as to why I got into swimming. But I've always wanted to win stuff. So I've been ridiculously competitive my whole entire life. And so swimming was really a vehicle for me to be uber competitive and a vehicle to, I guess, chase my dreams and success, really. And my mum always taught me that in life, you give it your best. You don't ever come in if you haven't tried your best. And I've just tried to do that my whole life, really. And then I left swimming in 2008, and I went straight into coaching. But I'd always been a coach because I'd always I wanted to be a PE teacher. So when I was at school, I was coaching lots of different sports. Like I've got my level 1, level 2 basketball, hockey, football, all those sort of qualifications. And basically I went through all the, get your CSLA, community sports leaders, then your HSLA, your higher sports leaders, which were brilliant qualifications to do. And then when I retired from swimming, I needed a job, straight away, and still had my dissertation left to write in my degree. So I just thought maybe I'll give swimming coaching a go. And I got a head coach job at quite a big club, City of Derby. And basically they took a chance on me and I took a chance on them. And then it was sort of, 8 years later, it was a pretty successful club after I'd been there for 8 years. So I guess it was a PE teacher's background that I wanted. So I did a lot of coaching in other sports with a knowledge of swimming, and then I took a chance on coaching, and then I fell in love with it straight away. And I think that's the big thing, is when I left swimming, I was a bit worried, will I love something the way I loved swimming again? And I was so lucky to find I actually loved coaching way more. So I didn't love, I missed being fit and having abs and glutes and butt cheeks that were useful, you know what I mean? But I didn't miss the swimming in the end.
And what about that? I suppose that coaching in different sports and PE teachers, like, how did that give you a grounding and set you up for coaching in the future?
I think it's not necessarily from a technical point of view, but through my CSLA and HSLA, I had a really brilliant teacher who taught me what it is to do lesson plans, to review, taught me how to coach on my feet, and taught me how to be innovative and creative and really challenge my thinking on that. His name was Mr. Cooper, and he was really awesome. So I think going through that, and I've done a lot of coaching in different countries. So like Zambia, where they don't speak much English, you really have to have that effervescent personality and the way to project your message to bring people on board. So I think the big thing that I did was I stepped outside of my comfort zone all the time with my coaching, even from an early age. Like I was year 11 and I was coaching sixth form boys football. That's just And so I did all that sort of stuff, and I just always tried to challenge myself. Can I write a better lesson plan? Can I write a better periodized training cycle? And I think that was the thing that I did throughout my early years and my foundation years. I had a brilliant teacher. I pushed myself outside of my comfort zone, and I just submersed myself in a lot of different teaching environments and coaching environments.
And then kind of how do you think swimming and being involved in the sport swimming and also being an Olympic athlete has again shaped you? So I suppose my observation from a couple of years working in swimming is swim coaches are some of the hardest working people I've ever seen, up early, working late, and have a real, strong work ethic. How do you think swimming shaped you, and being an athlete as well has shaped you being a coach?
I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of work ethic, Ollie. I was doing early morning training from when I was 9. So I was up in a swimming pool when I was 9 years of age at 5:30. And I was doing that, do that twice a week and swim 4 times in the evenings, and doing all different sports and going to school and all that sort of stuff. So I think what's hard work to some is just normal to me. So I just think it gives you that real graft, and you graft. So if I look at my, school swimming days, I would be 5 mornings a week and I'd be in the water for 5 o'clock. I'd travel 45 minutes to pool, 45 minutes back. I'd go to sixth form all day or school all day and play sport all afternoon. And then I would go and do training again at night. That was my foundation years. And then when I was a coach, to make it work, I would coach from 5 till 7 I'll take you through what was pretty much every day of the week. So I'd go 5 till 7 in the morning, coach my younger group. I'd then coach my elite group from 7 till 9. And then I would take their gym and write all their programs from 9 till 10:30. And I'd either select the Diddy League or select the Arena League or select whatever gala it was for a couple of hours and do my admin. Then I would coach a school group that I had to coach to get access to a pool from 1 until 3. I'd coach my elite group from 3 until 5. I'd then shoot across the city to another pool where I would coach the youth group again from 5 till 7. And if we were out without cover, I'd coach the masters until 9 o'clock at night. And I wouldn't think twice about doing that all the way through Monday to Friday. And then if we had a gala at the weekend, say the county championships that were in February, that were 3 sessions for 4 weekends across February, which was you'd drive to Matlock and you'd arrive at 7 in the morning and you wouldn't leave until like 8:30 at night. Then you'd have to drive another hour home. Then you do that again on the Sunday, and across the 4 weekends, you'd watch 882 swims, and one parent in the balcony would say, actually, you've missed my kid's feedback. And I thought, well, this is the one. This is the one. I remember counting it. I watched 882 swims and I gave 882 bits of feedback, and one girl I missed. And the parent had a go at me, and I said, thanks for your feedback. I appreciate it. I'm going to go and have my sausage roll in my car and have 11 minutes off, if that's all right.
Yeah. And I think I can definitely see that on deck in Loughborough, that kind of work ethic coming through, but also I suppose that ability to multitask. Because again, you chatted about this coaching job and this role within City of Derby, where it just seems there was 1,000,001 things going on, and it wasn't just coaching, it wasn't just working with athletes, it was you were managing the whole facility.
Yeah, I think it was, when you're a club coach, you're almost managing the same problems as a CEO for about 1 pence an hour. It's like, I remember, this is no word of a lie, in 5 months of coaching at that program, in my first 18 months, I had a parent commit suicide. I had another parent try to sue me. I had £25,000 worth of money uncovered, unaccounted for every year for the last 10 years. The pool hire tried to increase my pool hire by 50%, which would have meant we would have gone under. I uncovered a paedophile coach, and a dad threatened to hit me. And that was just like a normal couple of months at City of Derby. It was just, you're like one step away from a nuclear disaster every single day. And there was just a big city club with big city dramas. And you'd be managing all these things all the time. And there's serious issues, And I was only a young 26-year-old coach, and I was like serious problems, as in found, all sorts of different things. It was like horrendous, but just learn to deal with them and tackle one each at a time. But from a coaching perspective, you'd always have to clear off 9 hours of work just to get your session written in 11 minutes. It was just like, it's just constant tackling problems, putting out fires. So
and do you suppose in your current role, do you think all that, those, I suppose, challenges, difficulties, learning those, has that helped you now? I know it's different, maybe different circumstances and different things you have to deal with, but has that helped you now?
It does, but what does fascinate me in performance sport is how much time and effort we put into very small problems. So I think we overcomplicate it sometimes, and we overthink it. It's like, well, how did that person read that, and how did that person receive that? And then it's just like, I live with one of my housemates, and I said, I'll give you a prime example. So I was worrying if an email that I'd sent was going to offend people and whether it was the right tone and the right pitch. And I was having this big old stress about this email. And I went home to my housemate and I said, I've had a hell of a day. I've had this email, I've sent this, and I was like, how was your day? And she was like, yeah, we tried to get a bomb out of a shop. And also there was a guy attacked somebody with a screwdriver in the city centre, pretty stressful. And I went, yeah, my day's not that bad, actually. It's that, we do lose perspective on certain things.
Yeah.
And, I think we're not hardened enough to, criticism, and we're not hardened enough to just, say it how it is. We haven't got time in performance sport to just be wasting it on peripheral things that don't really make any impact.
Yeah, completely agree. So just, I suppose, moving a little bit into kind of current role and where you are at the moment, tell me what you're like on a good day and what you're like on a bad day, and how do you kind of reset yourself if you're on a bad day? Well,
you might be able to answer this one, Ollie.
Well, I've probably seen really good of you. I've probably seen a few bad days as well. So I can vouch and tell you what I see.
So I can tell you what I think I see, but I know how I was probably perceived. For me, on a good day, I'll probably be really irritating, over-energized, full of ideas, and probably having a few arguments with a few people. And on a bad day, I'll probably be quiet and withdrawn, and quite irritable, and probably just quite moany. I pick my person that I like to, I like to have a moan, because I feel like once I've got it out, then I can move on quite quickly. I call it offload to reload. But I'm somebody, if I'm on a bad day, I need to get that out and need to find that critical friend that that I can have a conversation, and I can, moan about things that are really irritating me. And once I've done that, then I can go and then be a good leader or a good coach for the situation that I'm in. But I have to have that right. Somebody's got to take this, because I cannot keep this in, driving me mad. And it's like, you'll know, Ollie, I like to come to you and I like to be viciously moany. But after I've got it out, then, there's not much I can't cope with.
Yeah. Here, Ollie, you have this.
Here, Ollie, you just need to have this just for a minute.
Yeah. I can tell when Mel's on a good day, because when I rock up at the pool, you can usually hear her from inside.
Yep. I only have 7 down days a year, though, Ollie.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a big part of who you are, Mel, is as a coach, is creating a special relationship with I suppose, your athletes and kind of your team, and creating that great environment to be in. Has that always been your approach, or have you, I suppose, changed or tweaked that over the years?
I think it's just my natural dominant response is to go to people and to, I would say that my biggest strength is I'm a belief partner, and I can illuminate people, and I just interact with people well, I think. And that's where I find the keys to unlock people's potential, is by finding out more about them and also threading the dots. So when you're in an organization, to upward influence or to get what you want or to move things, you have to really listen to what's going on in all areas. And then you kind of thread the dots, actually. Well, if I speak to him about that, and then I have that conversation with that person, then that's going to allow us from a performance perspective to shape that in a better direction. But I've always gone with people first. Swimming's the vehicle to me. And if that's what they want to achieve, then, I'll find out the answers that I need to help them achieve on that. But it's all about the people for me. And that's probably just my dominant response. Some people, it's all about the technical stuff. Some people, it's all about the physical preparation. But to me, it's all about the people preparation. And I've always said, if you put people before performance, performance takes care of itself.
And do you have, I suppose, again, we've got some good examples in the centre we work in, but how do you think by creating those environments and getting those trust and relationship with the people, how does that make performance even better?
I think you're winning if you can make a group of people care about something for each other rather than just about themselves. I think it's, not to answer that question, Ollie, I just think it's like, you look at the pandemic now, right? What it is to care about someone, to have closeness with someone, to have a hug, or to, have a real close conversation, and everybody's in a bad mood because they can't get that. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just life, isn't it? I suppose it's, life's about your interactions with people, and, how you share a moment in time, and how some people you share a long time with and some people you share a short time with, but it's how you grow through every person that you meet and you help them grow at the same time. That's, to me, is the most important thing.
And we've certainly seen some challenges over the last 8-9 months with COVID, and like, again, without blowing smoke up Mel's arse, I think you've done a really good job in addressing some of those challenges and creating an environment, and a normal environment for a lot of the people in the centre and the athletes you work with. I suppose, again, with regards to COVID, what's the one thing you've been thankful for during this last 7-8 months, and what's the one thing that kind of really pisses you off with the COVID situation? Because everybody's different in this, but it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts.
I think the one thing that pisses me off is it's still bloody here, isn't it? But I think the whole COVID situation I would summarize like this. It's like someone said to me once, your personality and your character are not the same thing. So if I look at me in terms of my personality has found this incredibly hard, as in I've been anxious about things, I've been upset about things, I've absolutely hated it. My personality is soft as you like. I cry at the X Factor. I took my Jack Russell dog in underneath a fleecy blanket. I will cry at the John Lewis advert every single year. I'm ridiculously soppy when it comes to falling in love and all those kind of things, like ridiculous soft. That's my personality, but my character is who I decide to be. So every day I walk into that building, I'm like, nobody's going to know that this is fucking me off. Nobody's going to know that I hate this. I am making the choice every single day to win every round. So if they're saying we can't get in a pool, I'll get a pool in a garden. If they're saying that we can't have lanes, then I'll find a lane somewhere else. If they're saying that we have to have all the protocols, I will enjoy all those protocols. And so that's the difference for me, is it's like your personality is who you are. You can't change who you are, but you can change how you behave, and you can change how strong your character is. And that's what I've tried to do through the whole COVID thing, try and win every round the best that I can. And so I guess that's COVID in a nutshell for me. But personally, it's not the front line, so you feel guilty, but we've lost everything, absolutely everything. And every single day I have to get in my rowing boat with half an oar and keep rowing in the middle of the storm. I can't beach up and wait for it to pass, or I can't, go on my furlough and not do much for 6 months. I'm like, right, in my rowing boat I go, and I have a smile on my face the whole time. I try and win the whole lot. So it's been really hard. But again, as my mum would say, you're not in a care home, you're not in the hospital, so deal with it. So
great. This was a couple more from me before we kind of open it up to the wider audience. I think, again, just thinking about some of the questions I was going to ask you. So one of them, like, I'm really grateful for is observing some of those key coaching moments that I see you or Dave Hemmings or Andy or any of the coaches in the program. And I suppose by that I mean those moments where you kind of shift or change people's behaviors or outlook in a situation. So again, and one that comes to mind was probably one last year with Adam, where you brought him into the office and you used Rob and yourself to kind of shift his mindset. You remember that one?
The acting lesson.
Yeah. And again, that that was that was just a really good way of you getting the message across without, I suppose, being too blunt around it. How do you know when to do those, and you know, what's your approaches again? Is it just an innate way that you do it, and how do you know, again, do you tailor that depending on the person you're working with?
Yeah, well, I think it's, you know, your listening skills as a coach are really important, because your information gathering techniques and how much information you have on the person informs your choices. And I think for me, it's knowing which choice to make. So it's knowing when to be almost like the best friend. It's knowing when to be the disciplinarian. It's knowing when to, you know, say no. It's knowing when to say, I'm willing to flex on that. It's knowing when to provide data. It's knowing when to provide, you know, an audio way of explaining your message. And it's having all those kind of those skills in your box as a coach. And I think, but the quality of your message comes from how much you understand the situation. And then it's how you interpret it, and then how you understand that person to give them that message that will change their behavior. So, you know, and I think that some of that's quite natural for me. So for me to act out a situation and almost like role play some of the behaviors that someone's exhibiting, you know, that was quite a natural thing for me to do. But it's always about how is that athlete going to interpret this message, and how am I best going to change the behavior? So again, it's like having that wide skill set to be able to interpret your message in many different ways.
Yeah, and you talked about it, I think we put out on Twitter today, about on a podcast you did with Brett Hawke, about kind of periodizing your language during the year, about, you know, maybe the critical and picking up on the things to work on early on in the year, and then accentuating the positive as you go through the year. Again, is that an approach that you take with specific athletes or with your group? Yeah,
that is. And like, it's timing, you know, you need to be authentic. So if all my athletes go, oh, she's only being nice to me now because this is the nice zone. But it's like you would physically periodize, you should psychologically periodize, you should technically periodize, and you should tactically periodize. And I think the one thing is, now in this current climate, you know, with athletes and, you know, the mental health aspect, what we have to do as coaches now is we have to frame it in a way by they are inviting that psychological or physical challenge. So say, look, from a world-class point of view, this is probably going to need this. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be quite stressful. Do you want to do it? And then they take ownership for it. They take responsibility for it. And also as well, they're inviting that kind of extra pressure and challenge into their worlds. And so I think that's the key to the modern day coach now, is set out what's expected, set out the harsh realities of that uncomfortableness, and then ask them, give them the power to opt into that or opt out of that. I think that is something that needs to be is really important as you move forward now.
And then just picking up a little bit around that, I suppose, that coaching, and again, being part of the environment and seeing you coach in Loughborough, you certainly create a unique environment for the athletes. What are your thoughts on the environment that you create in training and how that transfers to competition?
But everything's about competition. So I think the one thing that I'm half decent at is they just can't get past me. So they'd be like, oh, this is no good. And I'll be like, do you want me to put my letter in writing for putting things on a piece of paper that are going to help you get better? Because I'm quite happy to put it on headed paper if you need me to. So there's that sort of, and then you just have a laugh about it then. They can't get past me on that. And they'd be like, oh, I'm tired. I said, well, could be worse. You could have woken up in Bangladesh and walked 5 hours for water. That's a real problem. This is just a privilege that your parents have paid for all this time, so your biz will do a good job. So they just, from that side of it, you can't let them get past you. Whether that's my strategy of how I don't let them get past me. And they've almost given up now. They're just like, oh, brilliant. But it's making sure you know your standards and you know what it takes, and you know, you challenge their thoughts and thinking all the time. I think that's the thing is, you know, and the bottom line of it is, it's like, it's not for everybody, this performance sport. It really isn't for everybody. And that's why you got to remember, you know, there's 48 medals given out at each Olympic Games. Everybody else is going home with a broken heart. So I think that message as well is throughout your training program is like, look, no guarantees in this. There might be, but we'll give it a good go. But that's the thing is, like, you know, 13,000 athletes aren't going home from Olympic Games with a medal, are they? So what's everybody else doing? So you've got to prepare for both. You've got to prepare for it might go well, but also prepare for you know what, this could quite easily not go how you want it to, but can you cope with that? And you've got to build a resilience around both, in my opinion, the win and the loss, because it's coming to them all. In this game, you're not just going to go through and just keep winning. It's just not. So you have to have strategies around your athletes that makes them robust enough to cope with the win and the loss, and also actually exploring what failure is and exploring what loss is actually reduces anxiety anyway. Because most people like to know, you know, why are we so anxious at the moment? Because Boris won't make a decision. And so if he gives you 3 or 4 options and you've explored it, you'd be like, well, you know, if it's 2 years down the line, then I perhaps won't spend all my furlough money.
And then again, just picking up on some of the training you do in the center, and I suppose what's your philosophy on preparing athletes for that competition arena of the Olympics or the World Championships? How do you adequately prepare them? And I don't mean from a physiological perspective, but mentally, and that they're ready to go and that they feel like they're going to fly when they get there.
I think I'm really lucky in this sense because I've been to the front line in terms of the arena. So it's quite a natural thing for me to be able to pull out things that would simulate. But for me, it's like I heard a basketball coach once say that they used to practice on their practice court all the time, but they never really practiced on their game court. And so they started practicing on their game court 3-4 times a week because they wanted to get as close to what game time was as possible, how big the stands are, how big the environment is, what does it smell like, what does it feel like, what does the air conditioning feel like when we pass the ball, what does it feel like in terms of the color of the lines. And I think it's about bringing into your training environment as close as you can to the top end as possible. Like, so for Adam, I did a session with him that ran for 3 years. And it was all about trying to create that simulation of what it would be like at the Olympic Games. And, you know, I had the set was running for 3 years, and it ran from the trials to the Olympic game and to the major meet every year. And we added things like, you know, we recorded the audio from the World Championships the year before. He would listen to that, listen to what it was to hear lane 1, hear lane 2, hear lane 3, hear his own name, how long it took, and familiarized him as much as we could with that high pressure environment. And also the big thing is your job as a coach is to desensitize them to stress. You know, everyone gets an extreme, people get a stress response from going into an environment. And the idea is that you reduce that stress and you give them the coping strategies so that they can also reduce their stress so they can deliver what they're capable of delivering. So
great. I think we'll probably do last 2 questions from me before we open up. So
I'll just grab a drink. 1 sec. It's literally
yeah.
2 secs.
Yeah.
Go.
So I mentioned you're kind of coach to Luke Greenbank, and I thought, you know, obviously I know the story of Luke and his success kind of at European Games and as a junior, and then he had a little bit of time to transition to a senior.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's a really good story. So can you just expand a little bit on that and what you learned as a coach during that process?
Well, Luke was a world junior record holder, and he came to me and he basically swam slower for a whole 3 years. But the big thing about that was, I think the one thing that I learned through that process is that transition takes time. You know, the average person that converts in swimming anyway from junior to from junior success to senior success is actually 3 years. So Luke was, 6 months beyond that. He's 3 years and 6 months. So I think the big thing is that, that transition takes time. So that was really important message. But also as well, the big message in terms of Luke was that we did try a few different things, and that was an important part of the journey. But ultimately, it was just about him believing in it. And I'll tell you the story. So in the European Championships in 2018, I got it wrong. So I hadn't got his physiological preparation right. The training program wasn't working. And I made a promise to myself when I came into coaching that I would never do that thing that coaches do, as in, oh, it's in the athlete's head. They haven't prepared enough. It's like, and the blame. And I made a promise that if it was my responsibility, I would apologize and I would tell them. So I had to go and tell him he wasn't in the relay for the European Championships. That relay then went on to win. Mm-hmm. And, it was and I remember sitting down with him and I said, look, this one is on me. I said, I haven't got this right. I need to go away. I need to speak to a whole load of different people and I need to come back with a better model for you. And I said, all I need you to do is accept my apology and just trust in me that I won't let you down and I'll get it right. And that's all I need. So what I did in that moment was I didn't put it onto him that he couldn't cope in the big arena. I put it on me that he had something to blame. And then I went away and I changed the model around and then we ran with that model for 12 months. Around the edge of that, I involved his home coach again and I made Luke think we were going back to the physiology model that he did when he did the world junior record, which was sort of true, but it wasn't true because I'd actually got the model from Mo Farah that I was going to use and all this sort of stuff. But he believed in the model because he thought that it was similar to what he was doing before, which some of it was. I got the leadership team to influence his confidence to say, it's not you, you just need to change the model. And so loads of things around the edge so that he believed in himself, but he knew that this change of physiology was going to be something he could also believe in and then follow. And then I pitched it really low to start with so he could overachieve. So he got some momentum. And then once I'd got the momentum, then I started to challenge him more, but I just needed to get him back on a trajectory to start with. And then the pressure that comes with that was massive. So, when you have coached the Olympic champion and you have anybody else, people think you're a miracle worker and you think, oh, well, she must be. And if you don't do it 3 years sooner than anybody else has done it, you don't do it like that, people think you're a terrible coach. And I really witnessed people in around me actually getting excited that I might not be a good coach because it might, also be starting to challenge me around she doesn't know what she's doing, X, Y, and Z. But over time, I backed myself. I went and saw the right people, got the physiology model right, supported Luke the whole way through. And then lo and behold, we got a World Championship bronze medal at the end of it. But even still, the average age of conversion is 3 years. So 3 years and 6 months isn't too bad.
And if I remember right, you're pretty happy about that.
Cried, Ollie. There's my personality. It pops out, you see.
Yeah. She was stood beside me, as she usually does.
I tend to grab hold of Ollie's knee, you see, when I get a bit excited. I have to go
stand beside me. I don't know what it is.
In the old,
And last one for me before we hand over is, if you were head of swimming, what one thing would you change to make swimming better for everyone or for you, or what would you change?
I think the big thing is I would change it immediately. And that is what we've got to stop doing is trying to pretend that we can find and pick people's talent because we've got big hands and small feet or whatever it is. I think our job is to create a platform to maximize the amount of numbers rather than pretending that we think because somebody's got a long torso and a long pair of legs that they can do it. I just think our job is to get as many as we can for as long as we can and create more platforms of opportunity for coaches, for athletes, for staff, for scientists, and then we'll find talent that way. If I look at myself, I was 5'6". I've got a mum that, I've got genes that aren't great in terms of from a physical sense, and I would never have made any talent pool. But what I was resilient, I was tough, I was good technically, and I wasn't willing to hear anybody would say no. But I just think that I'm just not sure that we should be picking out people just because they've got long legs and long arms and that they've run a trajectory and an age. You look at a lot of the guys here, they're like 30 and they're at their best. We've probably passed those guys on by now and said, by the way, you're never ever going to make it by saying that X, Y, and Z. So I just think for me, it's about keeping kids in it for as long as they can and as many of them as we can and just making sure that we create more platforms, more opportunity, and most of the things that are associated with performance in terms of doing well are actually free. Forget facilities, forget X, Y, and Z. A lot of the things that you can develop within athletes are mostly free and through good coaching.
Great. Right, I think had lots of questions come through, Mel, so I think we're going to hand over to Phil, I think, for the Q&A.
Yeah, we've had lots of great questions coming in, and I'm going to try and fit in as many of these as we possibly can. So the first question comes from Bethany Carson. So Bethany, I've unmuted you there. You should be good to go.
Hello. Hi Mel, thanks for coming on tonight, and well done. We've been watching the ISL closely from Ireland. It's been great. It's nice to have, especially at the minute. Actually, before I ask my question, I might go back to the Luke Greenbank story and just ask how you knew that it was your fault, if you know what I mean, rather than, putting the blame on him. What was it that made you realize that it was something that you had done wrong in the prep? Or
I just he doesn't cope physiologically very well with intensity, and I run quite a high intensity program, and it just wasn't working for him. And so I just think that he wasn't getting any better, and he should have been. He's super consistent. He's got a great attitude. He's always there at all the sessions. We just discovered this kind of new model, and I actually spoke to a couple of really good physiologists and got some really good ideas from cycling and from endurance running and this model and knowing him. So I suppose I just knew he wasn't getting the improvement, and nothing was sticking. It didn't feel like he was like put any building blocks on to make any progress. So I think that was the thing I sort of just knew. But I always said that if it was me, as well, like in that moment, it could have been a little bit him that he, but I was just like, no, I take this one, because sometimes you that you take it. I remember a couple of my coaches, there was a couple of things that I was just like, it was a bit unforgivable. Whereas if they'd apologized and said, look, we're in this together, it's half my responsibility. I'm not sorry, but it's just like, I can make this better. This is on me. Yeah. I just think that that's not for every conversation, but when the time is right for that, I think we should be brave enough to admit that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my original question was just two parts. Sorry. One is like, when was the moment that you knew performance coaching was your career? Like, you did a lot of other coaching and involved in a lot of other sports, but what was that moment where you're like, yeah, this is it?
Well, I think I've always, because I come from performance sport, from a swimmer, I always felt like I had so much to offer back to athletes. But the moment I walked on a poolside at City of Derby, and someone said to me, you can't have national standard swimmers here, you've got to pass them on. I was like, bring it on. So that was it. Someone said that I can't, and I was like, jog on. All
That's
right.
Right.
So basically I was just like, bring it on. I got this. So yeah, someone basically said you can't, and I was just like, absolutely not.
Nice. And then the next part was just, what would your biggest piece of advice be for newly qualified coaches or young coaches that are maybe just trying to figure that out for themselves?
I think one of the things would be build your cohort. So people that you trust, you respect, that can give you feedback. Because if you're a young coach, you find that 99% of the feedback is negative. It's either moaning parents that they haven't got any kind of chance to get PBs. It's either administration staff. Like I used to get a gas boiler man calling me every Monday morning saying that I didn't know how to coach his kid. And I was just like, am I going to come and change your gas boiler, am I? I was like, well, no, because I've got 20 years in this sport. So everyone's laughing because they've all had the gas boiler man call them, haven't they? I don't know how he got my number. So I just think that, build yourself a trusting cohort, because if you want to get better, it's got to be people that you trust, and the feedback is important, and it's got to be the right feedback. And I would just say, take time for you, because if you don't, nobody else will, because you're in a position whereby people, somebody will always want something for you. So you've got to be really strict on your, what is an emergency to somebody who's texting you about the Diddy League at 11 o'clock at night is not an emergency to you as you're trying to put your kids to bed. So I just think if you don't take care of you, no one else will. So make sure you do.
Lovely. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bethany. Some great questions inside there. So we're going to go to Paul Morris next. So Paul, you should be good to go.
Thank you. Hi, Mel. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. So I'll get to my question in a second, but I just wanted to say thank you because I had the privilege of watching your coach Adam in Northern Ireland. I think it was March of this year at the McCulloch International.
Oh, amazing.
So it was great to obviously see British women making that journey over to Northern Ireland and seeing and chatting to you guys. So thank you. It was a great honour to be able to do that as a new, freshly faced coach. So obviously peppering you for questions and insider info and knowledge and stuff. So thank you for that. But as a male coach, what can I do to encourage girls, women to consider a path into coaching? Because I feel I have a responsibility to give something back to the sport, share my experiences, my enthusiasm with that potential next crop of coaches.
I think someone told me something really good once, and it's sort of stuck with me. And it's boys battle to bond, and girls bond to battle. So I guess what I mean by that is that us girls like to do things together. They like to do things as a community. We like to do things where we like to chat and have informal conversations, and then we'll go and do some coaching. So I think it's create a platform whereby you can get that bond first and get that cohort and get that togetherness, and then you'll find a much more stronger, a stronger opportunity, I think.
Brilliant, thank you. And then my last question was, what advice can you give to a coach to help define and communicate what their philosophy is? It's something that I personally try to struggle with. I sort of know what I'm passionate about and I know what I'm passionate for, and it's how do I define that and make it available and communicate that effectively with whether that be my group of swimmers, whether that be with parents. And I sort of know what I want to say, just don't know how to do it.
I think the thing is, like I used to do, and I used to say this all the time, is like, you have to be one step ahead all the time of the parents and where it goes, because unless they've got direction and vision and your reason why, your how and your what's and your whens, they'll make up their own. So I used to, at the start of every cycle, I used to present my vision, and I used to present on what we wanted to achieve, why we wanted to achieve it, and also how we were going to go about it. And I never failed to keep doing that. So every cycle, it would be like a reminder of what the vision is. And I would present, and I would do it either, I'd get a room and present it, or I would, present it on the blog on a presentation or some way. But I would do a presentation every cycle just to keep people on check and have that open conversation around, look, ask me. This is the open forum. This is my time to tell you my reasons why and the challenges that we're going to face. And that's what I used to do. And I just think that it's sometimes the last thing. People just presume that people, they should know that. They've been doing it for 3 years. So they won't, because that's the thing, is you have to constantly in 10 different ways keep the same message going in. So eventually it lands.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Excellent. So our next question, actually, we've got two questions together now, which are around motivation. So the first comes from Noel Barrett. So I've just should have just given you the option to unmute there, Noel. And Noel is going to ask about club level, but then we also have Anne-Marie Williams, whose mic isn't working, and she's asking a very similar question around motivation, but from the Olympic level. So I'll leave it to Noel to ask his question. But when you answer, Mel, you might consider both the club level that Noel is concentrating on, but also Anne-Marie's Olympic level.
Thanks, Phil. Hi, Mel. How are you? My question is just for some of the swimmers that you're dealing with that maybe aren't considered a high performance, that don't have access to pool time at the moment, how are you still in contact motivating them until they do get to go back into the water?
I think the one thing is that we were quite lucky. So we were in a bit of, I suppose, different situation. But I think one thing we did, we stayed connected via Zoom. And we did a lot of like dry land and different activities, used it as an opportunity to do things differently. A lot of land-based training, and just stayed in contact that way, really. But like I say, it's quite different when you're trying to motivate, keep 16 people together to keeping 350 people together. It's a completely different journey. But if I look back in terms of what I would have done at this time at City of Derby, I actually would have gone with the philosophy of little bit is less is more, as in just what we'll do is we'll hit 4 sessions a week, on land. We'll do Zooms or whatever, but we'll do them really, really well. And actually, our guys were out of the water for 16 weeks, right? And they came back within about 6 weeks and they were the fittest they've ever been. So I think that there's an element of don't worry and don't panic too much, particularly at that young age. You know, definitely don't panic too much. But what I would say is do a little bit less, do what you do really, really well. And I think that way it won't be too draining for them. It won't be too, oh my God, I've got to get on this Zoom, this Zoom, this Zoom. It's just 4 sessions a week of really good quality stuff.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And then I can't remember what the elite level one was. Keeping motivation at the elite level.
Yes, it was effectively the any differences between the club level and the Olympic level athletes, especially those Olympic level athletes who were building towards the Olympics. And this was a real pinnacle that they were building towards. And now it's been deferred, and that change in the plans. And how do you help them to deal with that change?
I think the biggest thing that was quite important was I was quick to get in their heads around the opportunity rather than the negative. So as soon as it landed, I was like, hey, apart from Adam Peaty, who's going to now be a father a year later, I said, for the majority of our group, this is going to be outstanding. You're a year older, you can be a year better, you can be a year better. And then the message around some others, like my message to Adam was, hey, we have to wait longer, we have to wait longer. That's just how it is. Bring it on. But I just think you've got to reset their thinking really quickly, and you've got to get their eyes onto the positive, and just see the opportunity rather than the threat. See the positive rather than the negative. You're either a winner or you're a whinger, and that's a choice. So for me, it's just like, if this is what it is, we're winning it. End of. I always used to say to the kids at City of Derby, I used to say, if someone says to you the Olympics is cancelled, but you can have the Olympics in the ocean if you put your own lane ropes in around the sharks, it's not about waiting for someone to do that. It's about, I'll go in first and I'll get them in. And I think it's a mindset thing. It's 110% a mindset thing. It's back to what I said earlier around your character and who you choose to be. You can choose to be upbeat about it, or you can choose to be beat up. You can choose to be a whinger or a winner. You can choose to be a victim or a victor. That is your choice. So it's the same thing with the Olympics. And that's where, you have to role model that behavior. You have to, you have to fight the battles, and you have to role model that behavior from the front, even at times when it's killing you inside.
I have to admit, I absolutely love you're a winner or you're a whinger. that's something that I'm definitely taking away from this. Moving on, we're going to go to Deirdre Cunningham. So I'm going to ask you to unmute, Deirdre. Deirdre's got a question about culture.
Hello.
Hi, Deirdre.
Hi, Mel. How are you? How are you keeping?
I'm all right, thank you.
That's good. Well done on your coaching career. You've done a fantastic job. Well done. Delighted to be here tonight chatting to. Just a quick question for you. It's one, what culture do you encourage your team to have, and how do you nourish it? And I suppose I'm going to break the team down into 2 areas: the team of your athletes and the team of your coaching and your teaching people. For me, they're all one, but obviously different directions for different people. But how do you encourage that, and what type of culture?
Well, it's different. It's interesting you asked that, because if I suppose I've been different I've got some things that I won't compromise on in terms of the people aspect and the value and all that sort of stuff. But it's a bit different for me now because I work amidst an organisation. So I'm not the key decision maker in a lot of things, and I actually sit as a part of a cog in a bigger infrastructure. But how I try and go about things at the National Centre with, I try and influence things is, for me, it's about individuals doing them. So I always say, you do you. There's 7 billion people on the planet and there's only one you. So we should not be looking at what other people are doing and what other people aren't doing. We should be looking at how do we embody the best version of ourselves. And I do think that I've done that in all the jobs, and even the job that I do now in terms of with the London Raw and my other jobs. So for me, one of the big things is like your individual opportunity to get better for yourself. I also think in terms of, it's about, certainly now and even before was, when I was at City of Derby, it was about making the best of everything you've got. So I would say to the guys at City of Derby, I'd be like, hey, if we are having a tombola, we're having the best tombola that's ever existed. we know glasses of wine and whatever from wherever you can find it. We're going to make as much money as this we can, and we sort of we established that culture of excellence that runs through everything you do, and that's what I try to do now in terms of my current role as well. Is try and, you know, if there's things to be won, we should be winning them, because it's not we're not in the participation game, we're in the performance game. And so that for me is probably the second one, is establish a culture of excellence that runs through everything you do. And also the final thing is be understanding that people are going to make mistakes. You know, like I will, and let people be human in themselves. You know, if I look at the athletes, they're 21-year-old kids, you know, with not much life experience because they've grown up in swimming where everything's been organised for them. You know, they're going to make mistakes. So I just think that we should be supportive and let people, you know, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be progressive. I think that's the big thing, is that I think they would probably be the three things that are quite important for me in terms of from a culture perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
That's great. And we're gonna now move on to Jason, who's got a question about bounce back ability, and I'm gonna unmute you there, Jason.
Hi, Mel.
Hey, Jason.
Thanks very much for tonight. Just a quick question. Earlier on, you mentioned the importance of building resilience. And obviously in high performance coaching there comes losing and disappointing performances. Do you have any strategies in place that you instill for bounce back ability?
Yeah.
Considering they could be gone from one event to another event in a short period of time.
Yeah, well, I just think it's how you get that message in. If you're in a boxing match and you get cracked over the head, you've got to get up quickly. It's the same thing with a result. If a result cracks you over the head, you've got to get up quickly, and that is resilience. And I think it's an acceptance of, in this game, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but every single time you learn some. And it's your ability to get performance moving forward, is your ability to reflect, plan, do, and review and move on. And I think that's the strength of your next swim or next effort comes with your ability to move on quickly from the last. And I think if you're in a tennis game, you know, someone might do an ace serve. You haven't got time to just take 3 weeks out to just work out what next shot you're going to do. You've got to move on quickly. So I just think it's getting that messaging in of, you know, don't dwell on it, learn from it, and move in, and have that mindset to move forward.
Would you be positive in terms of reflection after that? Would you have any strategy in terms of type of questions, or is it positivity, or just work on the, you know, the improvement points straight away and just get them done and get on with it?
Yeah, I just think, you know, what technically could you do better? What tactically could you do better? What psychologically could you do better? What physically could you do better? Just ask those series of questions. And I do think as well, like sometimes some athletes need the opportunity to offload, to let out emotion. I think that's a really important thing as a coach, that you let that happen and you are there to absorb that, or you're there to give that space for time to happen. But I do think it's their ability to, after they've become emotionally hijacked, how quick they can turn their own heads around to, right, okay, offload to reload. And I think that's the big thing, is the quicker that you can do that process, the more successful, more opportunity you have in the future.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I actually wrote down offload to reload earlier as well. It just was another one of those that I think I'll have multiple things to take away. We're going to move over to Helen Kennedy now, who's got another question. So you should be good to go now, Helen.
Hi, Mel. How are you? Delighted to be watching London Roar. It's great to have something. We're cheering for you all. My question is just, do you have any tips on getting the balance right, particularly with teenagers, with regards to allowing them the kind of freedom of choice and taking ownership as against getting the work done?
How old are you talking?
Well, I suppose I'm talking kind of 13 to 16-year-olds.
Hard age group they are now. I think it's in anything in life. What we're a victim of now is we're unfortunately a victim of an evolution of relaxed standards everywhere. And so things like discipline now get mistaken for bullying. People, you know, having high standards, that's like, oh, that's unfair. And so it's a very difficult balance to strike. But I think the big thing is that don't be afraid to have high standards, and don't be afraid to have respectful discipline, and don't be afraid to instill a framework around people that's going to help them achieve and actually be better in life in the future. And don't be afraid to say no. I think so many people now are like, oh, what do you think? Should we go? But it's just like that age group. It's like sometimes actually hearing no is really important, because when they go out into the real world at the age of 21 and they've got one CV and they're against 1,400 other people in a job interview, they're going to hear a lot of no's. So actually don't be frightened to be that person that still gives that discipline and still gives that no and still gives that framework of this is what we're going to need to do to achieve. And actually you find that a lot of kids in that age group, they actually quite like a framework and like discipline. And so I just think don't be afraid to still uphold high standards, and you lead the way. I think that's, it doesn't have to be a democracy all the time. It can be actually, I've been in this for 10 years and I am quite clear on our vision and I take your feedback, but ultimately I'm still the boss and the overall decider in this decision.
Yeah. I suppose it's just maybe the more you get them to buy into it, then the more responsibility they take for it, and it's trying to get them to do that.
Yeah, I think it's a balance. I just think, but it's that, and because if you just let them run the show all the time, it just turns into some. So I think it's the ability to have the balance of, what do you think about this? But my thoughts would be create a structure first and give them an option, rather than just having a loose, like, what do you all want to do with it? And I still go back to the point is you wouldn't put a 13-year-old in a car because it's too young for them to drive. So some things, don't be afraid to be the person. You're still in charge of the car.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. That's brilliant.
Yeah, there's some fantastic insights there. And we're going to move across to someone who I think will probably have a couple of questions. We might have to cut him off. We're not sure. He'll probably stay on after and ask you a few anyway, Mel. But we're going to go over to Ed.
Thank you, Alan. Mel, thanks so much. I do have a couple of questions, but I think I have the final two questions. The first one is, as a former athlete who transitioned into coaching, were there things that you found yourself coaching the way that you were coached and that you had to work out of your coaching and have acquired then as a result of being a coach? Because we would often hear of coaches who were former players or athletes themselves, and they realized after a while, I'm just coaching the way I was coached. And if there were things, what were they? But also, how did you work them out of your coaching?
I think for me, I was really lucky to be around a lot of great coaches, but also to be front hand of, what was good about them and then what wasn't. So I've always had my own unique way of doing things in terms of the way I deliver my sessions. But what I tried to do is those great people that I'd worked with, I tried to take the best of them and then instill that into myself, and also learn from things that perhaps weren't that great, that I didn't witness, that I wouldn't like that in my coaching. So I think I've always had my own way of doing things, and I just tried to take from those good people the good things and tried to make sure that my coaching didn't kind of embody any of the bad things. So I think that would be it. But I definitely don't coach like anybody else that coached me, I don't think.
Okay. And one other question then, based on our chat last week with Anna Stoddard from a rugby perspective and the work that she did around just understanding the feedback and how coaches actually learn. What elements of that, let's say from a coach education perspective, you talk about, getting out of your comfort zone. She spoke about getting out of her comfort zone and the need for coaches to do that. What do you do, or if you feel like you need to get out of your comfort zone, or if it helps you as a coach, but are there times when you've been outside your comfort zone, and what have you learned from those times?
Every day is outside my comfort zone, to be honest. But I think I actively seek that out. I'm like nervous if I'm not uncomfortable. So so here, everything in everything this year, the rules were all new. But I'm all over that, because I'm just like, good, challenge, let's go. Can't understand the numbers, call Ollie, get a spreadsheet, sort it out, blah, 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 blah. So I think that's the thing that I do quite naturally, is so when I was 15 and you could pick your work experience, I wanted to find the hardest work experience for a 15-year-old. Everybody else wanted to just DOS off for 2 weeks, but I found a disability centre for adults, and I wanted to I wanted to submerge myself in this experience. And I remember meeting this girl at the start she was probably 35. And I remember being so frightened as to how am I going to communicate. And then by the end, I worked out, through her like movements, and she was like, I'm really pissed off at the fact the bus driver didn't pick me up till later, because she'd be like this. And, so it was just, and I think that I would encourage that in all coaches, is find the most difficult situation and submerge yourself. So if you're a young and up and coming coach, contact a national centre or contact a high performance and just say, can I come and watch? The biggest thing that's out of your comfort zone, like I said, when I retired from swimming, I went and coached in Zambia, and I was teaching, all of a sudden there'd be 150 kids with one ball on a mud field, and they'd be like, right, can you entertain them for 5 hours? And be like, right. So you're forced to come up with something. So I think that I've always actively sought out what's the next best thing, and how do I get better, and how do we get better? So
for someone, let's say, like you, inherently drawn towards getting outside your comfort zone, that may be not such a natural thing for people. Do you think that's a role that maybe coach education can do to maybe help people while they're getting their coaching badges, to kind of, dip their toe in the water, for want of a better phrase, to help them, get used to being outside their comfort zone?
Absolutely. I absolutely think that. And I think from a coach education point of view, it's understanding what's going to help people grow. Some people need to go slow, and they'll get there in the end. And I think that's important. When you're doing coach education programs, I think it's an ability to actually provide an individualized approach to people's development. I think that's the future, really, because like if I, you could still have 10 great coaches that would get to the same place, but like I would want to go dive straight in, then learn how to swim, and I would learn. Other people might want to go slow, but at the end, they'll still be able to get to the same place. So I just think it's an individualized approach to how, at the pace that they want to go at, and how, how best to help them get to develop. Because it's not just me coming on here and saying, oh, just dive in and just go. That's not for everybody. And so I just think it's an individualized approach, because the word is development, and everybody develops in different ways. And I think that if coach development can be more individualized, then you maximize your opportunity to develop.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And thank you so much for your time this evening. I'm going to pass you back over to Ollie now, just to wrap things up. Thanks, Mel.
Yeah, Mel, thank you so much for your time this evening. I definitely know how busy you are, especially this week. So I really appreciate you giving up some of your time this evening. And best luck to the London Roar this weekend. I'm sure a lot of people will be watching on and wishing you good luck and hopefully good performance.
Just so you know, we're 8 men down, but we're going to do it anyway.
Be fine. So that's it from the 7th episode. We have just one more left. That's going to be next week. So keep an eye on our Twitter feed for some more details around that. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and have a great evening. Bye.